people do want to live their lives. People do want to take promotions, raises, career advancements. And if we put roadblocks in the way and say, it's a mystery, it's a ghost, be afraid, at any moment it can pop out and go boo, then what game is this?
Every week here on More Than Profit, we explore the stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors who have made a difference in the world while building successful businesses. We sit down with each guest and dive into their personal journey, their struggles and triumphs, and the lessons they've learned along the way.
On this episode, we interview Karen Schoellkopf, the founder and CEO of Lead Fund, who dives into the critical issue of the benefits cliff, a policy flaw where a slight increase in income results in a disproportionate loss of public benefits, leaving many worse off. Karen has worked on projects for Samsung, Target, Verizon, Meetup, Spotify, the American Medical Association, and more, and led product at VoteRunLead, which trains women to run for office. She launched Hire More Women in Tech in 2014, making the business case for women in leadership positions in tech. Karen explains the benefit cliff phenomenon and discusses its significant impact on working Americans, emphasizing the lack of awareness and preparation for those affected. Our discussion underscores the urgency of addressing this policy failure and the importance of fostering empathy to better support families striving for financial stability.
Well, I'm excited to talk today to Karen. Karen and I have known each other now for a little bit over a year. She's a part of our Reconstruct Challenge and just actually was awarded a Phase 2 grant to continue the work in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm super excited about it. She's actually solving, I think, one of the biggest challenges that many people face as they think about employment and caring for their families and actually providing, not just providing, but thriving in their communities and pursuing the things that they really care about. So Karen, I'm grateful for the work that you do and being on the show today. I wanted to actually start off with probably a softball to you, but actually I think something that people are not going to be familiar with. And that's, could you help us define what the cliff effect is? Because I think a lot of people have no context for what we even are going to start talking about today.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks so much for having me join you. Stoked to be here. Yeah, we're focused solely on the benefits cliff, or what's called the cliff effect. And it's essentially when somebody earns $1, like for example, $1 or $2 more an hour at their job, and they lose critical public benefits that were worth much more. So I'm based here in New York City. The childcare subsidy here could be worth upwards of $900. So if somebody gets an extra $1 an hour at their job, it's not going to come close to covering what that $900 subsidy was worth. So it's earning more to earn net negative. And this is happening to working Americans across the country. And the really problematic thing about this is, if that wasn't problematic enough, is that no one knows if they're going to hit a cliff until after it's already happened to them. So this is a really pernicious problem that doesn't need to exist and actually exists because of a policy failure. So that's what we're here to try and bridge.
Well, and I think that's the crazy thing is what you just said is people don't hit the cliff until they've actually fallen over the cliff. Oftentimes they don't realize they've hit the cliff, which to me, I mean, if we just kind of step back a little bit, like to an individual person, what that creates is a ton of fear, a ton of anxiety, because they know something's coming. They need that $900 subsidy to help pay for their childcare so that they can go to work, but they don't know when that might get taken away.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot actually here, that a lot of people make financially conservative decisions out of this fear of hitting a benefits cliff. So two groups of people are actually affected by these benefits cliffs. One group is the obvious group, those that stand to hit a major cliff and will be in a financial catastrophe if they do hit one. And then there's the second group of folks that are making these financially conservative decisions out of fear of hitting the cliff, whether they will or not. And so this is actually the other part of the problem. It's that there's not any information available to folks around when this cliff may occur for them, how much it might be around. And people are facing really important career decisions, family decisions that they'd like to plan. People are ambitious. People have goals. And it's really hard to know when you've got this big scary in the room. So that's what we've been trying to do with our Benefits Cliff coaching program, sort of bring it down from this big scary into like, what are we talking about in dollars and cents? Are we talking about this $900 a month? Or are we talking about $20 a month? What does it mean for you? And what does this mean as it fits in with your ambitions and goals?
Yeah. And I think that's what I appreciate, because you said it is a policy issue, because what you have to actually do in the work that you do is it is helping the individual, the person experiencing or about to experience this cliff effect, understand what it is they're about to face. But on the other end, it's also saying, hey, there's something that needs to get fixed here so that we don't actually have this occur. Because I think what I experience, as a taxpayer, right? It's like, we don't want people to constantly be on government assistance. That's not the goal. The goal is to help people move towards self-sufficiency. And so it makes sense. Well, okay, so at some point when somebody makes enough, they shouldn't be on these benefits necessarily. But the way that I think it's been set up, the system has been set up, it actually doesn't help move a person from assistance at a critical point in their lives to self-sufficiency. What, in your mind, if you could rewrite the script, what is the right solution for the cliff effect?
There are different views of public benefits writ large, but benefits cliff are a pretty bipartisan issue to solve. It's essentially, I always like to say, it's kind of like, hey, when you are enrolled in benefits, it's as if you are getting onto a cruise, but nobody at the cruise company actually tells you where you're going to land. So you might land in Antarctica, you could land in Hawaii, you have no idea. And that's a very unguided experience. That user journey has no real definition towards the end. There hasn't been much focus put on what that experience is in the offboarding, and particularly how it is experienced for public benefits recipients, given inflation over the years. Like, a lot of these programs were created many decades ago and they haven't kept pace. These benefits sort of interact in different ways. So, like, just to understand, before we get into what the fix is, what the problem is, this is a multi-layered problem. If there was an easy fix, I know that there would have been one already. So public benefits are distributed at different levels in government. So it can be local, state, and federal. So these agencies communicate, but maybe they are siloed. There's also agencies across that layer. So I live here in New York. We've got multiple agencies that distribute different benefits. So here we have Human Resources Administration distributes SNAP benefits, while ACS distributes childcare subsidies. They also are not taking each other into account when they're advising clients. So you've got a lot of different silos that have been set up in different ways. And this can make it particularly hard to understand how these things go. You'll notice I mentioned SNAP. SNAP is actually, it's a federal benefit, but it's distributed differently state by state, because states have the ability to make different modifications to how that program runs. So it gets tricky quickly, and different states have different ways they do stuff. Like Colorado takes benefits into account and their whole system into account by county, which is very different model than most of the other states do. So as usual, we are in a country of a lot of different ways to do stuff. Everybody has their own way. And so that's why it's hard to kind of look at this system holistically and be like, okay, let's go in there. Let's do this surgical cut here. And then we've healed it. When I think about policy, I think about multiple layers of policy. So number one, I think about understanding data. Data is how we understand. Being data driven is the thing that I think, the limited amount I know about you, Bryce, I think you are a data driven human. I think a lot of people that are excited by technology are data driven, and the ability to understand the problem by being able to look at the data and then make conclusions from there is critical. We don't know how many people are hitting benefits cliffs across the country. Why? Because nobody collects this data. So one of the first things that I always try to put out there is, it's wild to me that we know how many people get new jobs. Department of Labor puts out a report every month, how many people get new jobs. We don't know how many people turn down jobs. And if they do, why do they do it? I believe that there are benefits cliffs hiding there. And like, that's a place where there's an apparatus already built into the system, the distribution, the data collection, the analysis. There's already a flow there.
How many, if you had a guess, because you've been thinking about this, how many do you guess would be Americans fall into this category?
It's a great question. I don't know. Some of the work that we try and do here is to better understand it. We put out reports of the data that we collect through our tools, of people actually utilizing our tools. We are also working on a project to take large scale data sets like a census and run that through our tools to better understand. We're starting with here in New York State, but we hope that it can be useful across the country. But the problem is people may not know that they're hitting a cliff. People may not realize there's one ahead of them. Some people are aware of the cliff effect. They talk about it within their communities. Other people have no idea that this exists at all, which is really wild. So it just really depends on which community you're in, if you're hearing. And by the way, there's a lot of misinformation and rumor that flies around in there. So they may be aware of cliffs, but they may have some misinformation around how it will function for them because of how it functioned for someone else. Hey, it affected my Section 8 in this way. Well, Section 8 can mean a lot of different things. And so it gets complicated quickly.
Well, and Karen, I love how you answered the question I asked before, which was really to kind of say there's really not a simple answer, because I think everybody wants okay, when you're deep in the work like you are, the question often is, okay, well, then how would you fix it? And it's well, it's not really a simple thing to fix this because it's multi-layered. And I think that's what a lot of times people don't understand. They think there's this one person or this one organization.
One benefit.
One benefit. Exactly.
The magic one to rule them all.
And it's not that way. Like you said with SNAP, I don't think people recognize that these things are appropriated at the federal level, but every single state has authority over how it's executed. And when you're talking about transient populations as well, when people move from state to state to state to look for jobs, they may know it in Kentucky, but then they move across the river to Indiana. It's a very different process. So I appreciate the way you answered that, because I think that is a lot of the challenge that people face, because you almost have to have a PhD in benefits just to even navigate the system. And that's the challenge I think we have in our country.
So researching this, I spent time on Reddit, and a lot of people who fall into this category just said, they don't have time to research it, and it's too late when they find out, and to reverse it is almost impossible. And so you just really go, how sad that these policies that we're thinking are helping people in the end are really hurting people. And then unfortunately, people don't have time or ability to redo things. And is there a state or a region or someone that you go, yeah, it seems like this, like Miami? Is there a place like that you can go, it seems like there's less?
They're doing it better than the rest, so to speak.
Yeah, or a region or a city or anything.
Well, first, just to follow up on what you were saying, yeah, it is overwhelming to try and figure out, and it's multiple benefits. And by the way, just to point out, people that are benefits experts, people aren't like, I'm an expert in all the benefits. They'll be like, I'm an expert in SNAP, or I'm an expert in SSI and SSDI, or Ticket to Work. Like, even folks that are an expert in one area may not be an expert in another public benefit. So let's be clear. It's not because people don't have time. It is because people don't have time, but it's also like this is an area of expertise that is spread out among many experts, which is again why this is so siloed and hard to get stuff to speak. In terms of is there a region that's doing it right? Well, here's what I will say. I think that there are some areas that are trying some stuff, which is super interesting. Another thing in terms of getting data is creating a task force within your government to actually be able to study the data you do have. Kentucky did this 2 years ago, which is, or a year and a half ago, which is really exciting. New York State has failed to do this multiple times. We just had another attempt at a fiscal cliff task force, and it failed in April. I went in 2019, I went to Albany to advocate for it. It failed then too. This takes money allocation, and it takes getting people in a room to start to decide, hey, this is an important topic that we do need to talk about. So again, there's a lot of policies, there's a lot of things and legislation that can be done before we get to, okay, how do we, we definitely need to change the benefit policy, how the benefits function. But there's a lot of ways that we need to understand how they're working so that we can do that well.
Yeah. Maybe walk us through your product, the Benefit Cliff tool. How does that work? And how have you seen that really empower everyday people?
Yeah. So we have this benefits cliff coaching program. We created a benefits cliff calculator in 2018. We've created a number of programs and products, but this one seemed to be a useful one to embed within coaching. So you can't go back to the benefits agency and go, tell me about my benefits cliff, because they don't address it with clients. They don't talk about it. So then people are sort of left going, okay, so who do I talk to about it? So we noticed a lot of people are talking about this within coaching, and we use coaching very broadly. This could be a coach, this is a counselor, social worker, case manager. It really spans industries. It could be financial coaching, employment coaching, workforce development training coaching, housing authorities. We work across a bunch of different types of organizations so that we can have resources and tools for coaches to be able to discuss this. Yes, we need to understand, where is the benefits cliff going to happen? But the larger question is, how do you talk about benefits cliffs with clients? So that's what we've created. We've created training and onboarding, professional development for the coaches, be able to talk about this very nuanced, tricky, very specific to the person question around benefits cliffs. We also created a ton of resources and guides, test cases, all in service of making sure that this can be as useful as possible. And then we also have like our benefits cliff calculator that predicts and estimates when a benefits cliff or multiple cliffs may occur for a client. And then we also have data analytics. So of the folks that are coming to your organization, being able to see how many people are hitting cliffs, how many people are making decisions out of fear of hitting a cliff. That sort of stuff can be helpful in understanding your own population and in communicating outward how your population is experiencing what they're experiencing on the ground. So we work with organizations all across the country to run alongside their curriculum. We're not trying to change anyone's curriculum. We're just trying to be there as a tool in the toolbox. And what this does is it helps embed this conversation as a part of a user journey for a coaching client. So whether it's at the beginning of a relationship with the client at intake or at a specific point along that journey, knowing that you have not just a tool to address benefits cliffs, but a plan to talk about them. Part of this is making sure that even if someone finds out they're not going to hit a benefits cliff, they have an understanding of what it is, how they function, what this can mean for them in the future if they were to utilize other benefits or if they were to change their situation. So really, this is both education overall on what is this issue and how can it affect folks to kind of fight that misinformation that's out there. And then also, what does this mean for you and your specific experience and your goals and your ambitions?
In October of 2015, Jonathan Kumar stood on the street corner in downtown Seattle. He watched a man beg for 20 minutes as not a single car opened a window for him. The man, Edward, stood there painfully seeking diabetes medication for his feet after recently ending up on the street. As person after person passed the man by, Jonathan eventually approached him and had a conversation with him. It was then that Jonathan realized this man was experiencing not just financial poverty, but a profound sense of relational poverty. Many urban city goers continually confront homelessness, but are caught without time, cash, or wherewithal on if cash will even help at all. These and other barriers lead to the easiest response: do nothing. And so, individuals without a home are told hundreds of times an hour that they don't exist. So Jonathan built Samaritan, a support platform that empowers people without a home to move forward. Individuals gain the social and financial support needed to rebuild hope and reach housing goals. Become a Samaritan today. Be a part of encouraging your unhoused neighbors and funding strategic needs to help them reach life-changing outcomes. To learn more and to become a Samaritan, visit samaritan.city. And also check out episode 46 of this podcast to hear our interview with Jonathan about his journey and the amazing work they're doing at Samaritan. And now back to the episode.
Interesting to me is reading some of these Reddit articles that were written by people that live under this fear. It was a young lady that said she remembers being 9 years old, learning about having fear. They didn't know where the boundary was, but their dad got a raise and then they were fearful of what benefits could they lose. And I just thought, that's real. I mean, like, a person's 9 years old and that's a conversation at the table, because there's great fear of going an extra $400 a month is making a difference. And it's systemic and it's been around forever.
It is. It's systemic. And it's also like, listen, when many people first learn about this, especially if they are not a public benefits recipient, and they're like, well, it's just that people need financial literacy. And that's actually not the thing. I will agree that we need financial literacy if we say up and down the income spectrum. I believe we all need financial literacy up and down the income bands. But what people are trying to do is make strategic decisions. People are ambitious. And I think that's sort of a narrative that has been buried over the decades. I think there was a lot of damage done in the 80s with the welfare queen stuff and Reagan. And the goal here actually is that people do want to live their lives. People do want to take promotions, raises, career advancements. And if we put roadblocks in the way and say, it's a mystery, it's a ghost, be afraid, at any moment it can pop out and go boo, then what game is this? I go to an accountant and I'm a 1099 human. And I go, okay, how much do I owe the government for the taxes? And they go, okay, you owe 15 grand. But hey, did you know if you use a SEP, if you open a SEP, you can put 8 grand towards the SEP, and that means 7 grand goes in the tax payment. How cool is that? Why don't we have that kind of strategic advice for folks receiving public benefits? These tax advantages, these tax credits are the same. The mortgage tax credit is the same as receiving SNAP. So for us, we treat them the same. These are people trying to make strategic decisions and do the best within the system that they're operating. We're all operating in these systems. So
yeah, that's well said. And Karen, I love it because I am a data person, because I do think the data, for me, knowing leads to empathy and empathy to action. And so the tool, when you and I sat down and went through it together, it's super powerful. And I can put myself in the position of a single parent that's needing to navigate this whole thing. I can humanize that. But then also, as a person that doesn't experience that, it's like, oh my gosh, I had no clue. And so there's a level of empathy where it's like, oh my gosh, now what do I need to do to help my fellow person navigate this better? Because that's where I think the power of data is so great, because it not only empowers the individual having to make those critical decisions in their lives, but hopefully it leads to some empathy in our broader community, where people actually stand up and say, hey, this is not right that we put this upon people.
Making sure that it's not an overwhelm of data so that you can't make sense of it, right? What we've tried to do from the very beginning, we are user-driven, human-centered design. We have worked every step of the way with public benefits recipients and community-based organizations that serve them. And so every step of the way, we ask, does this make sense? Is this how you talk about it? Is this graph useful for you? Is it useful as a graph? I mean, the main information when we started in 2018, the main information that was available was either in the academic fields, which is meant for academic discourse, or in awesome stuff written by economists, but it was made for policy folks. It wasn't made for folks trying to make a decision about like their on the ground situation. Should I go back to school? Should I have a kid this year? Like, people are trying to make real decisions. When we went to these places I was like, hey, you've already done this thing. We don't need to recreate the wheel here if you've already done it. But like, how would I use this if I was trying to make a decision? Everyone just said, oh, no, this isn't for decision making. This is for legislation. This is for case making. And so that's why we've gone about this approach. We've worked to make everything very user friendly and user centric, to give enough context, enough information so that you understand what's going on, but not too much where you're like, whoa, I do not need all that. What does this even mean? I need 4 degrees just to parse this. So the data is important, and how you present that data, making sure that it is consumable in plain language, all of that stuff. We've worked really hard, really easy to visually read and scan.
Just going back a little bit, what was interesting is I was sharing with some of the listeners that you're going to be on and with what we're talking about with Lead Fund. But so everyone was curious, what was the inspiration to it? I mean, because you have such a great background in so many different things.
You have a master's of fine arts. I learned, I didn't even know this before I looked into it. You do professional like artwork and photography, and which is amazing. And you're a product person. I mean, so that's kind of somewhat of your background. So to Brian's point, what is the inspiration? How did you get into this?
Oh, it's been a wild ride. So yeah, I spent the first decade of my career in the arts. I worked for galleries. I worked for mid-career artists. I would work with artists from idea to actual thing in the world at an exhibition, say in China. I love making stuff from idea to the thing that lives in the world. It was a natural jump for me to move into tech. So then I spent about 10 years working in startup tech and working at agencies for large tech. But I really loved that creative spirit that exists in the startup world. So I spent about a decade there. And then I did this fellowship at Blue Ridge Labs here in Brooklyn. It was a 4-month fellowship. I thought it'd be something like fun for my portfolio. I learned about the benefits cliff through the fellowship. We were tasked with making work for working parents, and the whole fellowship was focused on low income earners. And so the goal was, hey, come up with a bunch of ideas and problems that you want to solve and some solutions as a group. And they brought people from all different backgrounds. So they brought people from tech. They brought people with lived experience. They brought people from the arts. They brought people from a variety of different backgrounds to come work together to try and solve some of these tricky, sticky problems that were most interesting to them within these boundaries. So Benefits Cliff was a footnote in a thing we read. And my co-founder, Caroline McAndrews, who has been working on this with me and remains on as an advisor, we were both like, wait a minute, this seems like a big problem. And so we started digging into it and going, okay, well, why doesn't something exist? And so it really was that spirit. It wasn't like, hey, I'm really excited to start a company. It was more, hey, this seems like a really dumb problem. And coming from tech, this is what tech does best. This can't be an existential problem. This is a math problem. And there's technology that like maths for you. Like it's great. So if we want to solve this is a math problem, especially on that transparency stuff. So let's do that. So that's what sort of started us on this path. Here we are into year 6 and still at it.
So obviously amazing. I mean, just that it's a footnote and now it's become your life. But with that, then when you're looking at it going, what challenges, because again, even understanding the culture of benefits it's like a whole nother world. So what have been the challenges over the last 6 years that you would go, it was really hard to understand, or what have been some of the things that you look at and go, because I know there's challenges in everything you do, but what were the big obstacles as you launched and got it started? Because it's just this huge debacle.
It is a huge debacle. That's a great word for it, Brian. When we started, there were folks that knew about it. There were like a few folks that wrote about it in academia, and it was buried in those websites on institutions, folder within a folder within a folder. There were some economists that wrote about it. They might use the word benefits cliff, but they also might use marginal tax rates, which is very fun words, right? Those are words that you use to just energize people. So it might be buried over there. And then you've got the lived experience, the public benefits recipients and the community-based organizations that are working with them. And so when we started with public benefits recipients, community-based organizations first. And everyone was like, yeah, this is a huge problem. And then we started going, okay, let's talk to the agencies. Let's talk to the policymakers. Let's talk to legislators. And there it was really mixed of like, is this a problem? Some people were like, no, I think we solved it. Other people were like, yeah, it's a problem, but like it's a bigger problem to get people to sign up for benefits. So let's just focus there. This isn't a priority. And then for others, like they were just sort of like, I don't know, it's not really something we're going to address. So that was what we started with in 2018. And there was very few people even talking about it. So I would love to say that like one of the bigger wins is narratively, people are talking about this more. You see this word in newspapers more, in articles more. And it's because of us. There have been people who've been writing about this a lot longer than we've been around. But it's really great to see more people focused on this as a real issue to actually have to solve for. So the education, I guess, Brian, is one of the biggest uphill battles, has been one of the biggest uphill battles. Benefits cliff is the most boring concept. Also, it's not a boring concept, but it's hard to explain. It's hard to get people to be like, okay, well, what is it again? Like, why can't people just figure it out? And so explaining it in plain language, making sure you've got examples that really hit home for folks about like, what does it mean to get healthcare? What does it mean if you've been working at a large banking institution for your whole career? You've never paid for healthcare before. How do I explain to you what Medicaid is, what Medicare are, why the change from that to the exchange is a huge leap? What does this mean for people? How much does it cost to pay for stuff on the exchange? Stuff like that. It's really, this is a tricky concept to start to convey to folks. And so education had been a big hurdle.
It was interesting because reading this different people, they would say the higher up in government that you get, the less they understand it. A lot of the grassroots people, like city government, like they understand because some of them have been on programs before or are still on programs. But they just said the higher up you get, people don't understand because everything's provided for them through their job or, and they just take all that for granted. And so when people talk about it, it's easy to go, I think that it's solved, or, we don't look at that because it doesn't affect their lives.
What I will say is my experience has been like, it really just depends on who you're talking to. I've certainly talked with folks in state government that are like, we totally get it. I've talked with folks in federal government that very much get it. And they're like, what can we do to solve for this? But I think that it is a challenge in that it is a huge system. It is uncoordinated and it is a big uphill battle of like, well, how would we start to wrangle this? And it can be a little tricky of like, where do we start first? What is interesting is there are a number of pilots out there that are trying different things. There are some guaranteed income pilots that have to tackle this as a part of the work that they're doing, or that are trying to tackle it in a variety of ways. There are dedicated benefits cliff pilots out there. We actually have a website called benefitscliff.com. We created it in 2019 because we had done all that research to find the stuff that was buried in academia, buried in economist stuff. And we started getting asked by people, oh, hey, can you just send me like the top 5 studies that I should read? And we were like, I've been in tech long enough. After you get like 10 requests, you got to make this self-serve. So we just made this website. It's an educational website. It focuses on metrics, studies, policy, both proposed and past, platforms by organizations, and then also some of these pilots and other areas that intersect, like guaranteed income, like the fight for 15. There's a lot of places that Benefits Cliff kind of butt up against other things that we're looking for to like improve wages, to improve how people are able to move through their lives. So,
well, Karen, for the 600 families in Louisville that you have already helped see and know the benefits cliff and make better decisions and understand it, and for the 6,000, hopefully you help in the next couple of years, I thank you for the work that you're doing. And I hope our listeners, more than anything, come to empathize with the circumstance that many of their neighbors face in the decisions that they have to make. So thank you.
Thank you. And I have to give a shout out here. We've done our part, but the Louisville Urban League has been amazing. They've been amazing to work with. We've worked with 3 of their programs, and they're the ones that are actually doing that hard work on the ground with those 600 folks that are educated on the Benefits Cliff, running through a Benefits Cliff session with clients. And we're so excited to continue to work with them, to be able to expand with the neighbor network and choose well. It's going to be a fun year as we seek to work with a lot of other organizations in Louisville. So thank you.
Love it. That's great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Profit. To learn more about Karen's work at Leap Fund, please visit myleapfund.com.
To stay up to date with More Than Profit, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, drop us a review so others can find us as well. Don't forget to check out our new website at morethanprofit.fm, where we have additional content and past episodes. You can also learn more about what's ahead by following us on Twitter at listen_MTP. More Than Profit is a production of Access Ventures and is hosted by Bryce Butler and Brian McKay. Our executive producer is Crystal Escoval, and our associate producer is Bryn McKay. Audio production assistance is provided by Resonate Recording. Our theme song today was No Man's Land by Slapstorm. I'm Bryn McKay, and you've been listening to More Than Profit.